Andrei Iosivas is the Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver ready to break out in 2025. At least that's what T. Higgins says. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Liscow. He's James Rapien, and we've been covering the Cincinnati Bengals here on Locked On Bengals since its inception back in 2016. So if you're looking for a daily source of Cincinnati Bengals news and analysis, you're in the right place. You can hit that subscribe button anywhere you get your podcasts or on YouTube and join all the everydayers out there that have those great listening habits, like making Locked On Bengals their first listen. And we appreciate all of you who already have those great listening habits. Today, we dive into T. Higgins' comments, hyping up Andrei Iosivas. We just spent a lot of time talking about Jermaine Burton. There's a lot of focus there, but maybe we should be thinking more about a third-year leap for Andrei Iosivas. Plus, we've got an OTA practice to talk about. The Bengals going with 7-on-7 a little bit more on Tuesday this week, a week before mandatory minicamp. And there seems to be a little bit of a focus on efficiency for the Bengals so far in the offseason program. And we'll talk about that topic as well on today's show, why that matters for the Bengals. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, you can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. James, let's start with the topic of Andrei Iosivas. Like I said, we just spent a lot of time talking about Jermaine Burton. A lot of Bengals fans thinking a lot about Jermaine Burton. Andrei Iosivas, as a day 3 pick, has been making progress for 2 years with the Cincinnati Bengals, and T. Higgins is excited about his potential in year 3.
Yeah, T. Higgins really excited about it. And look, Andrei Iosivas has been productive. And so you look at it and you see the 10 touchdowns in 2 years. You see what he's done, going from what a lot of people viewed as a project pick in the 6th round to a guy that is their wide receiver 3, is third on their wide receiver depth chart. And then when Dan Hort asked T. Higgins about Andrei, you get this kind of answer. Yeah, it's you feel pretty good about where Andrei's going.
Oh man, hell yeah! You know, Yoshi, he teaching me things, and it's night and day from last year to this year, and y'all gonna see this year. Yoshi's really gonna come on this year.
So if he's taking those kinds of strides, knowing that the Bengals have the best 1-2 punch in the league with you and Jamar, I mean, is this a 3-headed monster?
Definitely could be. You know, that's what we're looking forward to doing. And I got high expectations for Yoshi this year.
What's different? Like, what have you noticed improvement-wise specifically?
Obviously, y'all see him. He got bigger. He got stronger. He got faster. He's twitchier, and he know everything right now. And man, it's been great to see.
It's an exciting perspective from the Bengals wide receiver that himself expressed his Hall of Fame aspirations in another quote when he was asked about what the next step was for him, saying that he always has the next step until he's in the Hall of Fame. But that kind of enthusiasm for his teammate and talking about Iosivas as part of a 3-headed monster that also features a weapon that will be used in the receiving game in Chase Brown, who adds his own dynamism to the offense, not to mention Higgins and Chase, Mike Gesicki, another piece. That's already 5 guys that can contribute in different ways, each of them bringing different aspects to the passing game and in one case in the running game. I mentioned run blocking for Jermaine Burton yesterday. That's something that the Bengals already trust Andrei Iosivas to do. If that takes a step in his game, the only other thing for Yoshi, really, bigger, stronger, faster, that's all great, is really cleaning up some of the drops, cleaning up some of the timing. And there are a couple of plays from 2024 that come to mind where the ball's on him and he's not quite expecting it yet. That leads to some drops where he's just a little bit late to get his eyes on the ball with that ball in the air. This is happening on glance routes. Those are those deeper slants, in breakers quite often. And those are balls you don't want tipped. Obviously, those are some things that you would like to see him clean up. But then there are plenty of highlight reel plays for Yoshi in the clutch over his 2 years in the NFL. And so obviously the potential is there. So looking for the consistency, looking for, T saying he knows everything, looking for him to see the game slow down yet another step and emerge as that veteran, reliable presence as a wide receiver 3 in the offense. Like, those are the things that can take Yoshi's game to the next level, especially with T and Jamar getting all the attention to open things up for him.
Yeah, I think they're a safe bet too. He's a safe bet too when you look at his traits and his characteristics and how he's progressed since coming into the league. Like I said, 6th round pick, and he got to the Bengals, and they were like, "Oh, he's going to be ready sooner than we thought." And then he caught 4 touchdowns as a rookie on 15 catches. And last year, what we saw early on, same thing. It's a lot of red zone stuff. And then you look up and he's beating Denzel Ward in one-on-one coverage late in the season. And so, yeah, can he be the guy that can go into the slot when you need him to, or play outside when you need him to, and be the ideal third, the third guy in this wide receiver room? I think so. I think it's a safe bet. Now, he might not have the deep ball, I don't even want to say speed, but talent that Jermaine Burton has, or he might not be as savvy as prime Tyler Boyd was. But can he, with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in his prime, be the third banana? And I say that in quotes, on a pass-first offense and catch 50 passes? Like, absolutely. I think he's capable of doing that. And I really like that this was brought up, because if we're talking about breakout candidates, and most likely, and let's say something happens and Jamar misses a few games or T misses a few games, which is obviously he's missed 5 games in each of the past 2 seasons. The safest bet, the guy that the Bengals are going to trust, let's say on a short week, they have the Steelers are coming to town and they're nicked up at wide receiver. Well, of course they're going to trust Andrei Iosivas. He's earned that in a few months of Jermaine, or a few months of insert whatever rookie, maybe one of these undrafted rookies or Charlie Jones or someone. I don't think that's going to supplant Andrei Iosivas. And so that is worth keeping in mind when the Burton hype train goes off, or when preseason rolls on and there's going to be Isaiah Williams or someone like that has a big game or two. I think Andrei Iosivas is going to be wide receiver 3, and it's really the battle for wide receiver 4 and beyond. And that doesn't include, obviously, Mike Gesicki and what he means to this offense.
Yeah, it doesn't include Gesicki, because if one of those 2 guys has to miss a game here or there, then Gesicki's, we've seen in 2024, Gesicki's role expands when that happens in the receiving game. And he becomes more of a primary weapon, more of a primary game planning piece. Andrei Iosivas throughout the season peaked at 7 targets in a game. Most games he's between 3 and 5 targets, pretty consistently between 3 and 5 targets last season. There's a couple games where he's lower. There's one game where he's higher. From week 8 to week 18, he had 3 or 4 targets in all but one game. He had 5 targets against the Dallas Cowboys in week 14. Besides that, 3 or 4 targets every single week. Playing a lot in the slot last year. He was 50-50 slot and outside last year, so he's a chess piece for them that they feel can play inside. And when he's on the field, he's not giving away alignment. Jamar Chase can move inside when Andrei Iosivas is on the field as well. So just understanding the different jobs of receivers in the Bengals offense is something that they trust Andrei Iosivas to do. He also played a fair amount on rundowns as the only wide receiver on the field, or one of 2 wide receivers on the field. And they trust him in that role as well. And it's something where he could be better. Don't get me wrong, but the one of the more encouraging things, like I said, that T said about him is that he knows everything going on right now. So you do all that, the reliability, you expect Andrei Iosivas to take a bit of a step. He's probably pretty close to a finished product in a lot of ways. He's going to be 26 years old in October this year. He was a little bit older coming into the league, but like you said, he was coming from Princeton, right? So big step up in competition. This is a round where you would probably expect to see the player Andrei Iosivas is going to be. And if that can be another step forward, 50 catches instead of 36 catches, a little bit more consistent. And you're also talking about Mike Gesicki being in his second year in the offense, being a little bit more comfortable in the offense, potentially maybe accounting for a little bit of an uptick for Mike Gesicki, maybe the same level of production there. And maybe you're counting on Jermaine Burton being a real player for a handful of snaps a game. I think we need to get there. But if those things all come together, then you really have this melting pot of weapons that all bring something different to the Bengals in the passing game.
For sure. What a place it is to start with Joe, Jamar, and T. And I think that's the reminder, is because then it's like, okay, well, yeah, if it's Andrei this week, or maybe it's Gesicki one week, or yeah, maybe it is a game-changing player too by Jermaine Burton if he can get there. And he talked on Tuesday as well. But still a lot more to prove. And I think that's why I like what T said. He said some nice things about Jermaine as well, but said about Andre, because it's just a reminder. Like, he's been the reliable guy that's come in and worked his butt off, and that continues. And maybe he does take a big step forward this year. He does look the part. It's hard, though, on air in the offseason program or even in 7-on-7 for me to say, oh, well, this guy looks much, much different. We'll see. But we'll certainly take T. Higgins' word for it. We've hinted a few times at Tuesday's practice. We will dive into Tuesday's practice as the Bengals offseason program rolls on. We'll do that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA Finals are here. And I got to be honest, Jake, I am rooting hard for Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers. Not the Seattle Thunder. Oh, wait. Oklahoma City snatched the Seattle Supersonics from Seattle, and now they're the OKC Thunder. And I think a lot of people are going to be rooting for Oklahoma City, regardless of who you're rooting for. Get to FanDuel right now, because FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game, whether it's before tip-off or whether it's live. Let's say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets off to a huge start and the Pacers are down big, or vice versa. Well, that's the beauty of FanDuel, is you can go in, as I've done, and you go into the FanDuel app and you can live bet it. You can have multiple prop bets and parlays mid-game. And that's the best. Let's be honest. It's the NBA Finals. Have some fun with it. And right now, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. So throw $5 on the NBA Finals, get $200 in bonus bets. Maybe you think that Bengals futures are in your future. Well, you can do that as well at FanDuel.com. Again, that first $5 bet, when it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
We had some highlights go viral a little bit on social media. We had an interception. We had a deep ball for Jamar Chase. Those are the things that people following on social media, people following at Bengals on social media probably noticed, James, but you're there in person. Mm-hmm. We can obviously talk about those plays, but what else stood out to you? What were the big takeaways for you as you watch practice? And things ramped up a little bit. It's still pads off, like you said. It's still the off-season program, but we had some 7-on-7 at least to watch on Tuesday.
Yeah, some 7-on-7 and some big plays by some players the Bengals are banking on. And I think that's what you want to see. And the Cam Taylor-Britt interception, I think there's a lot there. And if you haven't seen it, he was guarding Mike Gesicki. Joe Burrow throws a ball late and certainly behind. And the moment he released the ball, was not happy with himself. And Cam makes a heck of a play, gets his elbow down. And I think that would have been a clean interception. Heck of a play by Cam Taylor-Britt. And a pretty wild celebration, I think, that might have gotten to Joe, because on the very next play, Joe goes deep to Jamar Chase for a 70-yard tutty, and they would have been grittying like crazy. So it was a nice back and forth. But what I think is interesting is that Cam was on Gesicki to begin with, and Gesicki was in the slot on that play. And we saw that a little bit last week as well. And so now that it kind of opens the door, like, well, you see Cam Taylor-Britt play in the nickel a little bit and guarding slot receivers or guarding tight ends and being able to use that physicality and strength. Is this one of the wrinkles that Al Golden brings? I don't know, but I do think it's something worth paying attention to. And next week during mandatory minicamp, I'm going to be eyeing, all right, where's 29? Is he lining up in the nickel? Is that part of it? Because he's certainly physical enough to do that. And will it translate? I wonder. So that's something I'll have an eye on. And
it could just be that he's locked in on a man and they're just playing straight up man. They're showing man, they're playing man. And Cam Taylor-Britt follows on that play, Mike Gesicki across the formation in motion. Mike Gesicki ends up in the slot. Maybe I didn't see the beginning of the play. I don't know if he was wide on the other side or what Cam's initial alignment was, but ending up in the slot certainly. And Marco Wilson outside on that play. Josh Newton also getting some time in the slot on Tuesday as the Bengals are without Dax Hill, obviously still recovering from last year's ACL. But if the Bengals are going to be a little bit more versatile with where these guys line up, and they're just going to say, we're going to lock on and man, you're going to follow the guy across and you're going to stay on him. Maybe they do this in a matchup dependent fashion. Like Mike Gesicki, Cam Taylor-Britt, that's a matchup that you like as far as a corner tight end matchup goes. Like Cam Taylor-Britt has the size, physicality to play with a big vertical tight end like Mike Gesicki, and it wasn't a great throw. You're right. It was inside at the very least, if not late. And Cam Taylor-Britt still has to lay out for it, as Gesicki had that little veteran push off at the top of the route on a little outbreaker and managed to create a little bit of space there. But Cam closed that gap and manages to break on the ball. And like you said, make a diving interception, getting the elbow down. So really impressive play from Cam Taylor-Britt, regardless of where the ball was, and very interesting for schematic reasons. Not only where is Cam lining up, but are they schematically saying, we don't really care where you're going to go. You're just going to stay with a guy. And maybe they're doing that, like I said, on a matchup dependent basis. And they're not going to do that if, say, Cam Taylor-Britt's following Zay Flowers into the slot. Maybe speculating, right? But maybe if it's a guy like Mike Gesicki or even like a Mark Andrews, they're more comfortable with that matchup. Sure. And also really interesting to me that Marco Wilson is out there with the ones. I guess I'm not sure who else would be. I mean, it would be Josh Newton in the slot and DJ Turner outside with Cam Taylor-Britt, but Marco Wilson, at least on that play, getting some run out there with the first team, I think, in 7-on-7s.
Yeah, I think I do think they're a believer. They're believers of Marco Wilson. He has believers in the building, and they were excited when they brought him back. I think they added him mid-year. We'll see, but he had to guard Jamar Chase and Sweats. It didn't really work out too well on the one play on that. Was it the out route? I think it was a comeback.
Yeah,
one of them.
Little comeback, something sitting down.
Yeah, I think it was a comeback. I think it was a comeback. Now that all the plays bleed together, but I think that's interesting. It's honestly with the Cam part of it. I love that it, even if it's matchup based, great. Because then that could mean Dax Hill is outside. By the way, looks really good shape. Said he's been running for months. I talked to him today. I like what I'm seeing from Dax Hill. Obviously, he's not cleared for camp. We'll see when he gets cleared. But that's big. And then the Marco Wilson thing. It's interesting because one of my notes here, since we'll stay with the cornerback topic, Josh Newton pass breakup. Had a pass breakup on the very first play of 7-on-7s. And I forget who it was on, but I have the clip. I'm going to pull it up here as we're talking. But it's like, oh, Josh Newton, 28, making an impact. And so we'll see. But I certainly noticed him on Tuesday on a few different plays.
Yeah, and they're working a number of cornerback groups in. DJ Turner was the victim to Jamar Chase on the go ball on the very next play that you mentioned that could have very well been a touchdown, like you said. So they're definitely working guys in, and we're seeing, I think, a bit of a theme, and it's early, and it's important not to take too much away, especially in 7-on-7s, especially this part of the offseason. But just like we're seeing Joe Burrow going under center a little bit at this part of the offseason, and we're probably going to see that a bunch in training camp again. We're seeing this trend on defense now where we're getting a feel for what Al Golden wants to do with guys following receivers in motion across the formation. And regardless of where they end up, you're seeing maybe a little bit more man. And maybe it's just the clips that are making it onto social, but that'll be something to watch as we're expecting to see a more man-heavy approach. And maybe that's the path for Marco Wilson. Maybe they think he is a better man corner. PFF thinks he's a much better zone corner than man corner, at least in 2024. So there's that. But maybe they like Marco Wilson's athletic skill set and the way that it would play in more man opportunities.
Maybe. And that's, hey, find the guys that can cover. And if that's what Al Golden needs and that's what he wants, fine. As long as it works out, right? I think we're all of that belief. By the way, Josh Newton, that pass breakup was against Mike Gesicki. And so Mike Gesicki involved in two of the bigger plays in the slot. It was a really nice breakup. It got to Mike's hands and Newton made a play on the ball to prevent him from catching it. And it was just a quick, would have been like a 3-yard gain on the sideline. So he broke on it and was able to make a play. But as you mentioned, it wasn't all great. You get tested. T. Higgins had a really nice catch in 7-on-7 as well. The play after. So it's kind of interesting. I'm just putting these together as we talk. The play after the Josh Newton pass breakup, Joe Burrow goes to T. Higgins and it would have been a first down. Then the play after the Cam Taylor-Britt interception, he goes to Jamar Chase for a 70-plus yard touchdown. So just something to consider.
Joe Burrow bounces back. Who would have thought? But you know what? Cam Taylor-Britt in the locker room after was talking about, he likes the big celebration. Like, yeah, let's get Shiesty out of Joe. Let's get Joe fired up a little bit here in the offseason program here in early June, right before they're about to take a month off. Why not?
Yeah. By the way, I don't mind it. I don't mind. It's just about that consistency, right? And we saw the up and down Cam Taylor-Britt roller coaster. I mean, my man was at Kings Island at times last year, and I like Cam a lot, but you got to be more steady and more consistent. He knows that. No one knows that more than him, and hopefully he can deliver. Hopefully that's a sign. Hopefully in October, November, we're like, hey, remember when he picked off Joe, and it just had that really awesome catch on the side? I doubt we will. I think our mind will be scrambled by then, but you never know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see if these things come back up. It's always fun when you see the plays in practice emerge in games. Let's finish up with a potentially bit of a different focus from the head coach on down to the rest of the team, and some other tidbits, notes, and absences, of course, from the Bengals OTA session on Tuesday to finish up the show next.
Speed is something that I noticed from Tuesday's session. And it is worth noting, I wasn't at last Tuesday's session, and they're open weekly to the media. And so I missed last week, come back this week, and I was watching practice and I'm like, man, they're moving pretty darn fast. It just felt like they were getting more out of the time, more reps. And maybe it's not, maybe it's the same amount, but it definitely felt like there was a I don't want to say heightened sense of urgency. I don't think urgency is the right word, but I do think that they were maximizing the time allotted, and you were seeing them get back on the ball faster. And whether it was drills where Joe Burrow's handing it off to Taj Brooks and then flipping it, and then getting a ball flipped to him, and rolling out and making a throw, whether it was the speed of that, like drills like that, or actual 7-on-7, I thought they were pretty darn efficient, and certainly something that I'll be monitoring next week during minicamp.
Yeah, that's one of the changes that Zach Taylor has looked to implement as they evaluated their offseason program, evaluated their approach to training camp. If this is a message, a focus that is resonating with the team, that is leading to some sort of somewhat different approach in training camp in the offseason program, and that yields results, then no one's complaining, right? Fast start is what everyone is going to be talking about between now and September that covers this team. And if this is a way to try to instill some sort of approach or thought process that can lead to a fast start for the Cincinnati Bengals, then great. We'll all be happy to see that, right? And so no complaints about that approach. What else stood out to you, James, when you thought about that? Is that kind of, are you expecting anything to be different, for training camp based on what you've seen so far in the offseason program? Is it too early to say there? Let's take your mic off mute as well.
Yeah, I think it's it isn't just lip service that Zach is saying, all right, well, we need to start faster, and we know that, and like obviously wins and losses, it's judged by that, but I do think that there have been some changes. Now, I always go back to it, like, do they truly need to make changes, or is it as simple as having healthy Joe Burrow week 1, which I haven't really had? Like, whatever, fine. He clearly, I think, is operating with a sense of urgency there, and that's not necessarily taking a quote of his or anything like that, but just kind of talking to players, talking to people in the locker room, and what they say, and kind of, not that Zach is going to change and be this yell, rah guy, but I do think that maybe he's like, all right, well, we need to start doing things this way. And it might be little things, but a lot of little things could equal more than that. And I do think it's left an impression. So I am curious to see how training camp is, how it feels. But I also think that already there's been some noticeable things for players and for people in the building, and we'll see if it translates to wins, because that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if they play 50 snaps in the preseason or 4. Do you beat the Browns in Cleveland? Do you come home and do you shut down Travis Hunter, Trevor Lawrence, and the Jags? Are you 2-0? And then you go from there. And so that's what I think is interesting, is this new approach, how it works out. But I do think that he would probably stop short of saying new approach, but I do think it's a tweaked approach for sure.
I think changes are welcome. Trying something different, if that's what's happening. I don't think anyone is arguing with that after the last couple of years in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Let's finish up with a couple of absences. Nothing surprising here. The players that haven't been practicing continue to not practice. Samaje Perine, in addition to that list, who was present but did not go through drills, did not practice with the team on Tuesday. Dax Hill, Zach Moss, also not present. Eric All, BJ Hill, all injury reasons there. Jermaine Pratt continues to be on the team but not be present. That will get interesting in mandatory minicamp next week. Maybe that is a bit of a deadline for them to figure out what's going on with Jermaine Pratt, because like Zach mentioned with Trey Hendrickson, if Jermaine is still under contract and doesn't show up, there are potentially fines that can come up there. Maybe
Does he
the
show
Bengals,
up and make it awkward?
I mean, maybe the Bengals have told him that he doesn't have to. Maybe they've excused him from it already. I don't know what the situation is there, but that did come to mind for me, because mandatory minicamp is next week, right? And so all the stuff they've done so far, optional offseason program, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, whatever it is, you get that one little bit of mandatory work before they're off until training camp. And, is Trey Hendrickson going to be away and taking those fines that he was unhappy to hear about a couple of weeks ago? And that's the only reason I mentioned the Jermaine Pratt thing, because the fine element for Trey is in the awareness a little bit more than it otherwise would be. And that made me think, well, maybe that is a bit of a deadline for them to figure out Jermaine Pratt, or maybe they've just worked something out with him, but still on the team. Interestingly, still waiting for the second round picks to work out. Who knows? But with mandatory minicamp next week, it's at least a little bit interesting to me.
Yeah, it is. It is for sure. Who participates first? Trey Hendrickson, Shamar Stewart, or Jermaine Pratt?
I'm going to say Shamar okay. Stewart.
Who's second? Trey?
Yeah, I think.
Jermaine could be out there next week. If Jermaine's out there next week, then he's first.
Yeah. Imagine. That would be quite a spectacle. Spectacle. Yeah, that's the right word, right? Spectacle. Yes.
Oh.
Well,
missed tackles. What missed tackles?
We've got one more show this week.
That's going to burn me. That's going to burn me, Jake. If he's back.
Well,
what missed tackles?
I mean, not just you. I think everyone has brought that up sometime in the last 6 months.
Missed tackles. Missed practice. What missed practice?
The Bengals have their mandatory minicamp next week, which we'll have covered here, of course. We have one more show this week. So for anyone who's missed the last couple of days, we're on a 3-show-a-week schedule right now. We're publishing episodes on Sunday, on Tuesday, on Thursday. This is a show that's going up on Tuesday evening. Look for another show from us on Thursday evening. We'll cover some topics that are out there that are off-season topics, let's say. For example, PFF just put out a roster ranking. The Bengals were in the bottom half of the NFL in overall roster strength. Maybe we'll have some thoughts about that at some point in the offseason. It's possible. That's something that might come up here on
Maybe you should be more
Bengals.
active in free agency.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's possible that we have said that once or twice as well. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Some exciting things happening in OTAs this week. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.
What missed tackles?